1 second.
No.
Yes, you will get a notification that I just went live. / we just went live. So,
I didn't get Facebook notifications.
Go to my page. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
You're gonna need. You have to get closer.
I will.
Me. Sorry to
tell you. As soon as I do
this.
that thing.
Okay. So we are working on getting up links everywhere. So hello.
Hello.
Wow, lots of people. Okay. All right, give us a second, guys. We're just a little bit early, but we wanted to make sure to avoid any technical difficulties, and we wanted to make sure to get up the link to get the link up to the class in a lot of spaces. So wow, 20 people already. That's exciting.
That's very nice.
So all right, hang on a second. And you guys can help with this, if you are watching and you understand how to start a watch party, we invite you to do so. Basically, if you go to share our event, it will say, do you want to just share it or do you want to start a watch party? I will give you a warning, if you do start your own watch party, for some reason, when you make comments in your watch party, it doesn't come to our video. So if you have questions, make sure you type them in directly to the video, if that makes any sense. So hang on while we try to get this going everywhere. And I always struggle finding the link, so give me a moment. In a group. Okay, here we go. We're going to share to the Printed Textiles group. If you guys are not already a member of the Printed Textiles in the Middle Ages group on Facebook, we highly recommend become a part of that. Then we are also going to share in the, I think it's called SCA Virtual Learning Classroom. We'll see. In a group. SCA Virtual Classroom and Artisan Display. That's also another fantastic group where you can see lots of great videos, classes. What?
Nothing.
Oh, you looked at me like I forgot something. Here, let's get your handsome face in there. So we're going to share it there. And then I need help because I don't know how to figure out how to share the links to the events. There's an event that the RUM shared. So Dame Eleanor, if you could help with that. And then if somebody could just throw up a link to our actual Facebook event that Lothar and I created, that would be very, very helpful. And then I'm going to shut down a huge list of tabs. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share a Google link to a Google document. Ooh, they like your chain, glittery chain. To a Google document, which is a very quick handout that we put together. We kind of decided to do this yesterday.
I think so.
Yeah. We decided to do this yesterday. So we threw together a really quick handout, which at the very end has a list of the class supplies, which we will go over. So if you can download it and look at it now, fantastic. It's strobing when you're moving. Oh, does he have to take it off? Is it too distracting? Anyways, if you can download the document while we're going through things, that's great. If you can't, we're actually going to be throwing the pictures that we're talking about in the comments up so that you can see that. Everybody's talking about your sparkle. I shouldn't have bothered wearing any highlighter. You got it. Okay. You got it covered. All right, so hang on. Let me share that link. Should be shared as a shareable document from my Google Drive. Oh, they say that your sparkle is a lot of fun and to keep it. So
thank you, Deborah.
Wow, Lothar, you sparkle. Everybody's going nuts. Okay. Okay, it looks like it's good. The Google file just went up. It is a block printing, a brief history, and a primer and getting started. So, what time is it? We got 2 more minutes, so before we really get jabbering, we're going to wait. We have over 70 people.
Wonderful.
That's exciting. I am really, really keen. We're going to put ourselves out of business, but I'm okay with that.
That's okay.
Because everybody will be looking better. So, do you want to stand up and model for them?
Sure.
I mean, everybody's loving your sparkle anyways. Why don't you give him some more Lothar? Da, da, da. So he is wearing a 12th to 13th century tunic, Norman style. The print that is on it is actually from a block that we purchased from Tie-Dye Travels, who recently rebranded into Kathmandu Designs, and we will share a link for them later in case you want to buy one of their blocks. We carve a lot of our blocks, but this particular one is beautiful, so we bought it. It's from the Regensburg silk. We call it the Regensburg Lions, so that's what he's wearing. It's sparkle-tastic. All right, there's such a huge difference between knowing how to block print and being good at. That's true. Hopefully, over the course of the next 3 classes, you're going to feel at least confident enough to start practicing. Because I'll tell you what, when I first started, I was not good.
Sure. Yeah, it's okay. So being in the SCA for nearly 30 years, because I'm old and ancient, I've attended a handful of classes. I mean, a handful, like not even a handful. And it was things like the effects of the plague on the nobility and really interesting things like that. But actually hands-on ANS, not my forte. So the day that I actually met her for the first time, I was actually taking a little block printing class.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
That's how we met. Block printing.
So, fate, perhaps.
That I'm really dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about
Yeah.
that. That's how we met.
Yeah.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah. So, yeah. So if I can do it,
He's
honestly, anybody can.
Dame Eleanor, I did just approve the link in our event, so it should be showing up. If it's not, let me know, and I'll go back in and do it again. So, all right, guys. We are at, wow, over 80 people. That's exciting. I know there are people from several kingdoms, so hello. We will do very brief introductions. You want to go ahead? What's your name?
Gosh. Lothar Nachschutten, sir. Real name, I go by Anton. Been in the SCA for, like I said, nearly 30 years. Nothing really exciting,
You're very modest.
Thank you.
I am Aveline de Schersbrook. I have been in the SCA for about, I think I just had my 5-year anniversary, actually. And we have only been doing block printing for about a year. By trade, I am a costumer, a seamstress, and a costume designer. I have done plays and operas and make lots of costumes for people. And we own the business, The Harpy and the Hag, where we sell wonderful clothing like this. However, today we have had just a huge amount of people that have asked us, how do I get started? And we struggle because we're like, oh, it's easy. You just do this. It's not that easy. But don't be intimidated. It's more that somebody needs to kind of line up the things you need to do, which we will, at the very end of this, give you a class supplies list. And we have a workaround for those of you that can't leave your houses. But before we get into that, I wanted to do some nerdy stuff. Are you okay with that? He gets to be the production assistant. I'm going to turn it from him onto just me because he is going to be busy on the laptop. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go over the history of things. Hang on. And then he is going to share... Wow, how do we get that picture? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Nope, that's a sticker. We don't want to give.
Stickers.
Oh, it might not let us.
Oh.
Okay. So I don't know that I can... Because I'll tell you what, when I first started, I was not good. We don't want to hear that. Let me try and post a comment and then see pictures below. And then we'll hit reply. Nope, it's going to take us in every time. Okay, so we will post the pictures later on. It's kind of a bummer they won't be able to get to see all of those pictures, but they are in the handout if you were able to either access it and look at it right now or if you've been able to print it out. So before we get started, we'll turn this so your handsome face is in there. We want to talk a little bit about what is block printing and why is it relevant to you in the SCA. So there is a little bit of confusion about what exactly block printing is, and the reason that this happened was the very early archaeologists that sort of started discovering block printing and resist dyeing and mordant dyeing and a variety of other terms just kind of lumped everything into one because what it meant to them were pretty pictures on fabric and people looking good. The cool thing about block printing is that it is the very first demonstration that we believe, it can't really date it, obviously it's prehistorically, but it's the very first demonstration of people actually attempting fashion and attempting individualization through painting and coloring their clothes. And we know this, let me pull up this, since you guys can't look at these pretty pictures, I'm going to steal a peek. Here we go. So really early on, we had people that were painting their clothes. And then the painting sort of became resist dyeing, which we'll go over in a moment. And then it became block printing and stenciling. And through that, they were able to affect and achieve different designs and pictures and motifs on their fabrics. This was done well before people were able to actually weave those fabrics, but they did it in a variety of techniques. And unfortunately, the very early archaeologists, usually in about the 1800s or so, just started lumped everything together. So for the purposes of today, we are going to be talking about block printing on fabric. If you're interested in block printing on paper, that is a whole different subject, though you will learn a lot about sort of the development of the technologies. And we'll sort of reference those as they go along, but that's not really what we specialize in. So the first thing that they started doing was they would paint on their clothes, and they would just take whatever dyes or pigments and they would apply it to their clothes freehand, either with their fingers or eventually with paint brushes or other tools. Then there was what we believe to be resist dyeing. And resist dyeing is where they take a paste or maybe sometimes just a wax, and they apply it to the fabric in the places where they don't actually want the dye to settle into the fabric. And so they would then create pictures or designs by dipping it into the dye vat. When it came out, they would then melt off or remove that paste or wax in some fashion, and then what was underneath where the paste or the wax was suddenly undyed and the fabric's natural color. And this was another way of creating patterns, motifs, individualizing their clothes. Then they started doing things like mordant dyeing. And if you're not familiar with how generally dyeing works, mordant is something that you can put on your fabric before you dye it in order to achieve different colors. And some of them will brighten colors, some of them will darken or sadden colors. And so they would take various mordants, and much like the early painting, they would apply those mordants in different shapes and designs so that when they dipped it into one vat with one color and they brought it back out, suddenly there were two or more different colors on it because there were different mordants that were affecting the way that the dye impacted or colored the fabrics. There's also something called discharge dyeing, which is sort of the reverse of that. You dye the whole thing one color, and then you take basically a bleaching agent and you take the color back out. I don't know that there's a lot of evidence that that was really done that much in period, certainly not early period, probably much, much later. We know that by the time William Morris was around in the 17 and 1800s, that time era, not him, but that time period of technology, there was definitely discharge printing. And then there's stenciling. Am I going too fast?
No.
Am I nerding out?
You're nerding out. I'm just smiling at her love for this is pretty ridiculous.
If I'm talking too fast, tell me to slow down, because I don't normally have a problem with talking too fast when it comes to public speaking, but this is my love. So I get very excited and very jazzed, and sometimes I go very fast. So stenciling, I don't know, was ever really used on materials until about the 14th century. And stenciling is taking a hard or rigid surface, applying it against the surface that you are going to put your paints or pigments on, and then either painting or daubing onto the surface what you want. Obviously, the stencil is then preventing you from getting where, I'm glad you're here to nerd with me, the stencil is preventing you getting the paint where you don't want it, much like a resist would. Nerd right on out, we will enjoy the ride. Okay, good. So those are the different things. So there's painting, there's resist dyeing, there's mordant dyeing, there's also discharge dyeing, and there's stenciling. And then there's block printing. So what is block printing, and how is it different, and how can it possibly be incorporated with those other techniques? So block printing itself, the very definition of it is that a pigment is applied to a block. The block is usually wood, but we also know of stone blocks, we know of metal blocks. We believe there are some clay blocks, although I don't think those would have lasted very long. So you are applying the pigment to the block, and then you are transferring that pigment onto your surface. In the case of block printing fabric, obviously you're applying it to usually cotton, linen, or silk. People are here for maximum nerdery, so I'm glad about that. So block printing is necessarily a machinated procedure. It is an automated procedure. I have carved the block. I know I'm going to get the same image over and over and over again, if I'm lucky and I'm applying the pigments right. And I don't have to repaint that same image over and over and over again. That is one of the difficulties that we have in looking at some of the early block printed stuff. It's like, well, is it block printed? Is it painted? Is it resist dyed? And a lot of archaeologists really did not make a big distinction because they didn't understand those differences. And so that is one of the things that I've been working on researching, is trying to do an inventory of everything that has to date been called block printing, categorizing it into what it is, and then getting a better understanding kind of which regions used which techniques more often, what time periods did those things start developing and getting great use. And if you really are enjoying the super nerd part of the presentation tonight, I am teaching 2 classes at Penzic. They've already been scheduled. I'm teaching one class, or they're both the classes are a history of block printing. And it is a 2-hour class, and there will be a huge, wonderful, full color handout. One is being taught during Peace Week. That is Thursday, July 30th. It's at 1 p.m. And then one is being taught during War Week, which is on August 5th. It's a Wednesday. It's also at 1 p.m. So look for that, and you will get many more details than I'm just sort of throwing at you at the moment. So we've gone over the different types of ways in which you can get patterns and designs on your fabric. It is important to note that these are often used in tandem and in conjunction. So as these technologies developed, particularly in India and in Egypt, they started using blocks to apply mordants and resists. And they started block printing things and then doing some resist dyes around it or doing some mordant dyes around it. But what we're going to be focusing on tonight and for the next 2 classes is really the exclusive technique of block printing. So what do you need for the block printing? And we will get to those sort of hard details soon. Let me make sure we're not missing any questions. It never dawned on me that I could use my batik stamps equipment with pigment, paint, and dye, not just wax. Yes, Bryn, actually you can. Yeah, he's like, should we scroll ahead? Yes, let me scroll ahead real quick.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Unfortunately, you guys can't see this.
It's like, oh my God, that's really amazing.
Those are great pictures. I will post the link again at the end of this, but let's talk a little bit about some of the early prehistoric and then very early contemporary accounts that we have of block printing. And this part is important because it will demonstrate to you that kind of no matter which time period you are, which culture you celebrate or like to represent, painted and printed textiles are for you, okay? So we know that in 3000 BCE, the Sumerians had clay tablets that were meant for printing. Now, the likelihood is those things that were meant for printing were actually meant to impress into other clay and wasn't necessarily for fabric. However, as of 3000 BC, we have evidence that they're going, oh, if we don't have to do the same thing over and over and over again by hand, we can automate the process. We know right there that the thinking is there. It tells us early on that the idea for using something to machinate or automate the process is there. Anyone else having serious problems with the video freezing? Hopefully not. Broadcast is smooth. Okay, sorry for those of you who are struggling. Medium amount, but I think it's more the internet. Yeah, that's the other thing. A lot of people are on the internet. Sorry.
Yeah.
So 3000 BC, there's a clay or stone printing tablet. That's huge in terms of the development of technology. Then we have wall paintings in Egypt from the Beni Hassan dynasty, which date between 2200 and 1800 BCE, which show colored stripes on the fabrics. And this is before they knew how to weave, and certainly before they knew how to weave in like diagonals. So that shows, okay, that many thousands of years ago, they're already starting to kind of show their fashion and to personalize their things. Then in 2000 BCE, we have another painting of Indians that are using blocks to actually block print fabric. And then in 1320 BCE, we have another Egyptian wall painting. This is of Hathor and King Manetho, and it shows stripes and other types of patterns on their garments that were probably not woven. They were likely painted or printed on. We're not quite sure.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's my job.
Since you can't be posting up pictures.
Keep her hydrated.
So I'm going to talk about 4 more finds early on, which will kind of show you the diversity of where block printing or painted and printed textiles were. So sometime between 500 BCE and the Common Era, we have a Peruvian resist-dyed piece that is held in the Staatliche Museum of Berlin that shows us they're already doing that in South America. Then, between 206 BCE and 9 of the Common Era, we actually have 3 block-printed silks from the Han Tomb in Maoyangdui, China. And those are currently being held in the Hunan Provincial Museum, excuse me. They are definitely block-printed. They are not painted. You can tell by the repeat of designs and certain markers of errors. Part of me wants to do something nuts and pull something from the block of Kells for making a block. You sure can. Yep. Then between 100 and 400 Common Era, we actually have a block printed or hand painted textile. It's such a small amount we can't tell what the technique was with the current pictures. That was found in the Tambovskaya region of Russia, which is about 1 to 3 hours south of Moscow. And that one basically had some oblique or diagonal stripes again. And the whereabouts of that one is unknown. I can't find it. The Russians don't want to tell us where it's at. So I will keep trying to find that, see if we can't get some better pictures, or any pictures. We just have a written description. And then between 300 and 400 Common Era, we actually have a wooden block that we know was used for block printing that was unearthed in Akhmim, Egypt, during that time frame. So before 400 Common Era, we have all kinds of contemporary accounts from all over the world. We have, you're messing up my stuff. What are you doing? We have Egypt, we have China, we have Peru, we have Russia, we have, no, you don't want to.
You. Like the wind.
Sorry. Herodotus in 484 to 425 BCE actually talks about describes mordant dyeing in an area that we now know as Armenia. Alexander the Great talked about how he had invaded the Indians in 327 BCE, and he saw the Indians doing block printing. So we know that it was kind of all over, and that's actually quite fascinating that that technology developed in multiple parts of the world simultaneously. Everybody had this idea of we need to personalize our clothing, our fashion, what we're wearing, and then it kind of took wind from there. So I'm going to say something about, sorry, a bunch of messages are popping up. I'm going to say something about historical accuracy, documentation, and what we do with that here in the SCA. Mm-hmm. I teach this class because I love the details, and I love really kind of, I'm a patterns kind of person, so I like to create spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff. And those things are important to me because they're interesting just from an academic perspective. However, I don't ever want somebody to feel like because they decided to block print something that we can't document that particular culture necessarily had block printing in that time frame. That's not at all. In fact, I'm quite the opposite. If you can make your garments look more like what you believe that it did through means that we can document in period, then I am absolutely all for that. There will be some people that will debate how early did the continent of Europe have access to block printed textiles, whether they were the ones that were producing them or whether they were trading them, and then we know that they actually had access to them. We do know that by the 13th century, Spain had a sumptuary law that said you were not allowed to wear printed fabrics, and we know that there's several other indicators that there was block printing in Europe, at least traded to them, even if they didn't produce it, probably 3 or 4 centuries earlier than that. So, I've gone over my nerd spiel.
Okay. All right.
So that's why it's important to you. That's why you should try it. That's why you should wear it. That's why you should have fun with it and learn about it a little bit more. So how do they get started?
Well, So since it's block printing, you probably want to start with a block. So going historically accurate, wood. Okay, pearwood is considered one of the easier or more historically accurate blocks to use. Fairly hard, a little bit difficult to carve. I wouldn't recommend starting with it. No. But it's like one of those like, ooh, here's my masterpiece. I shall use this. Me never. Just not.
Life goals.
Okay. For the going the opposite direction of, ooh, I'm really scared of this, you have these cool little foam blocks that you can purchase. Erica would. So, all right. So, again, super easy. You make a mistake, easy, it's cheap. But it's a good idea if you're just to get a feel for that. And this is what I started with in my very first class was, cool, I'm going to make a pattern and just you carve away what you don't want till you have what you envision. So.
And really quickly, you can stamp either directly with this rubbery, bendy stuff, or you can mount this onto wood once you have cut out or carved what you want.
Right. Or even mount it on the wood first and then carve out.
Right.
So, now, primarily what we've been using is a linoleum over the top of, and it's basically laminated or whatever to the actual wood, and we do the carving on these. You can order these in a wide variety of sizes. This is actually...
We cut that one.
Okay. So this is actually something that was cut off because we just didn't quite need the length on it. So we can actually do some really tiny cool stuff with this. So we're hanging on to that. But again, different sizes, different shapes. Again, this was one that... I don't know if I cut this one. Yeah, I cut this one as well. So you can get what you need.
What do you cut it with?
I use a bandsaw.
Okay.
I mean, there's, probably, multiple methods, but that's what I have and that's what I use. And then I do a little sanding on the edges. So
we have a couple of questions. Yeah. So Jenny Lynn Anderson asks, what was the sumptuary law restricted to certain people? And if so, who? Or one of those you can't use it at all kind of things. It's a great question. So the sumptuary law from Jaime I of Aragon restricted it completely. Nobody, including the king, were to wear it. And that was because a lot of the Moors in Iberia were starting to bring it into very common use. And he didn't want anybody else looking good without spending a lot of money. That's the nice thing about block printing. Stephanie Stewart Howard says, how do you feel about 3D printed stamps and does the effect match? I have not personally tried a 3D, but I'd be very curious to. And I think, so there's another gal who does acrylic-based stamps. And if you guys, Danielle Dewey, I don't know her name. If you know the link to her shop, please post it. And we'll also be posting one to a shop that we buy a lot from. The problem is with 3D and acrylic, my worry, I guess I should say, not the problem because I haven't tested them, is that when you're stamping in wood or linoleum, the pigment will start to sort of soak into it, and so you start getting a better transfer every single time. I worry how much the pigment will slip around on something that is either 3D printed or is acrylic. So I have not tested those yet, but I plan to probably before our next class, and we'll test it together. Make sure we didn't miss any other questions. Okay, keep going. I'm going to look to make sure we didn't miss any other questions.
Totally fine. So, once you have your blocks, honestly, you need to figure out what pattern you're going to be using. So the next step really is drawing it out on, this is actually going to be for a pattern for, actually both of these are going to be patterns for chasses.
Yeah.
But it's really, she's the artist, I am not. So she does all of that, and then I do my best to carve away all the big chunks, and then all the fine tuning is her. I just don't have the patience really. And but it's also so some of you know, and some of you don't know, but I graduated from massage school in 1989. I can do 13 massages back to back. I've done it. But hand sewing or this minute stuff, my hands cramp. And So I just would go here's the gross stuff out of the way, fine tune it, do the beautiful stuff, because
it works well.
Yeah, and
because I don't want to do all the carving of the mass areas.
Yeah, and we'll talk about different carving techniques in just a little while. So once you have your pattern drawn out, that's when you start working with your tools. So we'll talk about the more historically accurate first by using basically a very set different types of chisels and whatnot and blades. This would be
change this light.
Changing the light.
Okay, here. You probably want to hold it up against your hands. Yeah. Kind of like they do on the makeup videos. You're like,
so.
And I'm using this makeup brush.
So again, different
Put your hand behind it so it'll focus.
My hand should focus.
There we go.
So you have various things, and it's just a matter of finding the things that you're comfortable with working with. These can be as cheap or as expensive as you want them to be within, when I say cheap, within reason.
That lid does not want to come out.
It doesn't want to come out.
It's because I don't use that one very much.
She doesn't.
I use probably 3 tools over and over and over and over again. I use a 3mm 9 gouge. I use a 9mm number 3 gouge.
Right.
I use a V parting knife.
So if we can do, probably not. But again, slightly V-shaped. You can probably see it, not see it. Kind of horrible. But that's, sorry about that one.
Kind of horrible.
Kind of horrible.
I like that
as
one.
in it's not really showing up all that well.
Oh,
and and for that I apologize.
Right.
But, and again, what Aveline really said was she gets a couple tools that she's very comfortable and familiar with, and you'll find that once you do that, those will be your primary go-tos. Some of it's just experimentation. Aveline started with disposable scalpels as cutting things away, and she kept doing this, and I went, let me go to an actual woodworking shop and see what I can find.
I don't know anything about tools. I was just like, I want to make this. It looks cool. Here's what I got. I'm going to try. And then you were like, it's a lot easier if you use these other tools.
Yeah,
and I was like,
so I went, here, try these, and some of the X-Acto killers there.
Okay, so we have, that's the straight.
Yeah, I mean, this is just your classic, but it's got this really nice beefy grip, which gives you a lot better control. And where's your
where the curved one is? Is it over there?
No, it is not, unless it's not in here. But just show the blade.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
We're organized. And then you actually have this piece, which is actually the blades on the inside, so you can really, especially with that fine point.
Oh, here it is.
Oh, found it.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! So, again, you can just really get in and work and dig into the corners, which, again, that's what she does. Hi, Mandy! So.
Got some more questions here. So, Bryn says he is going to hook us up with a 3D printed block to experiment with. That's awesome.
Cool.
He also says that he has some tools for carving linoleum blocks. Any reason to think they would or would not work on wood, too? I'll answer that in a second. Actually, we'll answer that now. So, I know which ones you're talking about, and I bought that originally. On softer woods, it will work. But the one that you have that's for linoleum, that's probably made by Speedball, is not a very strong or sturdy blade and will get very dull very quickly. So you're probably better off buying a wood carving kit, which on Amazon or at Joann Fabrics you can usually get for $11 to $13. I would recommend that if you're going to do wood. Alessandra says, how deep do you suggest the grooves be to make the best carving? At least 1/4 to 1/2 inch. That's my preference.
Okay. So
and then the other recommendation I have is in terms of the space between the grooves. Do we have one that we can show them an example?
Yeah. Let's just do das.
Okay. So I'm going to use this to point. So you want approximately 1/8 of an inch between, I call them your elements. Because otherwise, if you don't have that much space and you use the technique which I use, which is a stamp pad and not a brayer, you end up getting a lot of bleeding in between those two things. We will go over that more when we get to the carving class and the printing class, but we're happy to answer these questions along the way.
Yeah. So definitely what we do, I don't know if you can see on this, okay, there you go, that top line, that's basically the linoleum. So anything around what we're not using, we carve down into the wood. And then also, and we'll talk about it later, but again, on the corners, we bring those down just so you don't have any chance of getting that. Yeah, because when you're pushing or rocking, but again, that'll be later, but a little thing now. So the next thing, you now have tools, and you have a block, and you now have tools. So carving, we recommend a little bit of safety because you're gonna slip. It will happen. So this is just one of those very simple, like a butcher's glove.
You can get them for like $6 or $8 on Amazon.
I mean, here's just the, so crazy. We're just crazy.
I will tell you, one time I stabbed through perfectly and just barely got a little teeny bit of the edge through, but I guarantee it saved me from probably a hospital trip.
Yeah. So, again, cheap, easy. Gosh, where do we go from there?
Breeze, hang on. Breeze says, have you tried dental tools? I have, and it works pretty well with linoleum. I haven't tried them in wood yet. Joanne's will honor Hobby Lobby coupons available online to save 40% on your tools. I agree. Mm-hmm. And then Adrius, send me a link if you've got a shop link, because I know you're going to start producing blocks as well. So in terms of the absolute must-haves, just to get started in carving a block, if you want to carve your own, you need the wood or the wood-mounted linoleum block. You need the wood carving kit, or at least the 3 things that I told you that I use the most, which are on the handout that's already been included. Mm-hmm. And you need a straight blade, whether you use just like a regular X-Acto straight blade or you get a box of disposable scalpels, because you will want that to clean up your edges. Mm-hmm. Other things that are optional in terms of getting started: a mechanical pencil, a Sharpie, an eraser, measuring tools like rulers and protractors so that you can measure out your designs and get them as symmetrical as possible are good ideas. The cut-resistant gloves that Lothar just showed you. Look, we're old.
Damn it.
And trying to see some of the details in some of these things, I use readers. Now, you could use like a magnifying glass, a stationary magnifying glass or magnifying stand, which I have like an OttLite that I use as well as these. But the nice thing also is that these protect me from my clumsiness.
And you also find out that you end up working kind of like a lot of times here, as opposed to, here's my magnifying glass and my light.
The magnifying glass is awkward.
Yeah, you're like,
And what prescription are these? Like 1.5?
Everybody has their own level of prescriptions that you may need. These are 2s. That's why I've generated up to 2s.
We're old. Very old.
So,
okay, couple more questions. Avoiding hospital trips is going to be super cool for a while here. True.
Yeah.
And then Peg said, where do you look for your inspiration for blocks, especially with copyrights of today? So I personally look at extant textiles. For me personally, my style, my aesthetic is I'm always trying to reproduce what I know that they might have tried to reproduce either with weaving or they were actually doing with block printing. Can you get the first block we did, the German one? So, nope, keep going. We got a stack of blocks. Okay, so this is our first one, and it's actually based off of an extant textile, as well as an extant block printed textile, although the block printed textile may or may not be forged. Long story. Come to my history of block printing, you'll enjoy that story. So this one is off of a Saracen textile. Keep handing. This one is off of a manuscript. We saw this in the the Menologion of Basil II from around the 9th or 10th century. So we interpreted what we were seeing in the illumination so that we could see that. Next one. This one is from an extant textile that is at the Met. It is from an Italian woven piece from Lucca, Italy. I don't know how to say that. Next, this is actually an interpretation of an embroidered piece that is currently held in the Ashmolean that is of either Turcoman or Persian design, 16th century, and the embroidery was very different colors, but this was the overall silhouette or motif. I don't know if we have anything else. That's just the Celtic cross. This one. No, we haven't. Do you want to talk about that one?
Oh, you can talk about it. I love this one.
So this one is, I don't know if you can recognize it. It is the Roger II of Sicily's Coronation Dalmatica. It is the bottom trim. That was actually embroidered, but this is the motif of that. So that's where I personally get inspiration. Grav Weldon Berenjali Buka and his lady, Dame Cat, they own Kathmandu Designs, and they get a lot of their inspiration from architecture and other popular motifs, and they have hundreds of beautiful motifs that can either inspire you, or you may just decide we're going to do that instead. Hang on a second. We have more questions. Okay, good. Nicholas Adrius D'Agostino put his link there. He is just starting to do some blocks. Andy said one of the local libraries has a makerspace with a CNC machine. Could that use... Okay, we actually looked into this. So our local library has that in their makerspace, and unfortunately, it only burns or goes down, digs down. I don't know. I'm not good with tools. About 1/8 of an inch. So I have not tried it yet because I suspect it's not going to work well. You need it to go down. Your carving or engraving or whatever needs to be at least 1/4, if not 1/2 inch deep, because otherwise all kinds of paint is going to get welled up in there. You'll get all kinds of bleeding between your elements because it's just going to keep building up in between basically the crevices of your block, and it won't work as well. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from using that, but if that's your first thing that you're going to try, I suspect you might not have the results you want. Then Master Philip recommends Dover Press as a great inspiration. I agree. Amy says, have you thought about putting together a beginner's kit with a couple of blocks, carving tools, gloves, and the razors that you recommend? Yes, sort of. In the, we will post that link again in just a moment so that it doesn't get lost in all the comments. At the beginning of this, we posted a link to the handout that we were going to try and show you, but we couldn't figure out on Facebook. And at the very end, there is a list of all of these things you should get. At the very bottom are 2 links. So the first link is our Amazon shop. The Harpy and the Hag has basically a craft shop in Amazon. So full disclosure, we do make a little bit of coin off of that, which we just basically throw right back into our teaching and our crafts and our A&S nights. But we do make some money off of that. I think we've made like $7.34.
We are on our way.
We haven't even gotten our first disbursement yet because that's how little we make. But we do that basically to just throw back into the crafts. So in that shop, there is a specific link to block printing supplies, which is actually the second link at it's the very last thing you'll find in our handout. And that takes you directly to it. So that you can go to Amazon today and click on all the various things that you think you want, and it can ship to you. So we know not everybody loves Amazon. There's not much we can do about that, especially given the current climate of things. So a lot of people are stuck at home. There are some people that have, what do they call it? Shelter at home or shelter in place rules, but you can still receive mail. So between now and next Friday the 27th, when our next class is, and that's where we're going to go over a lot more about the different carving of tools, you will have plenty of time to be able to buy the supplies that you feel you want to do it. And so we have like, these are the things that we think are absolutely required. Here are some optionals. Here are the things that are absolutely required for printing. Here are some optionals. That way you can kind of tailor it to your budget. Did you have anything you wanted to add right now before I...
I figured we're just going to something into the more streamlining of things.
One more question. Are you sizing your blocks based on the extant samples that inspired you? Yes, we are. You can do whatever you want. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. And I thought that was the laser cutter, not the CNC. That's true of both, Andy, at our makerspace. What kind of paint do you use currently? We use house paint.
Yeah.
We have tried and played around a little bit with inks. I don't like how they sit. I don't like how they print on the fabrics. And the great thing about house paint is it's cheap, it's readily available. You can hand wash it, lay it out to dry. You can iron it if you're using an acrylic or latex based thing, and you should have no problems. We have been having good luck with your CNC for royal favors in the East Kingdom. I'm glad to hear that. I will look into it more. Can you tell us maybe some of the specs of your CNC machine that you're using, Sarah? Should be able to cut 1/2 inch deep on a CNC. I don't think the one at the library does, the makerspace does, but I will look into that. Oh no, I have an Amazon credit card. It's going to be bad. What about using Dremel tools?
So that is next.
It's a good question,
So
Gwyneth.
this was our first block. How long did this take you, my love, my dearest?
22 hours.
22 hours. Now, it's also not just, oh my God, it's 22 hours. It's 22 hours of learning, 22 hours of using disposable scalpels and not using...
And no wood carving tools.
And no wood carving tools. So
Because I didn't know what I was doing.
then it was like, here, try using these. These will perhaps help. So she get this really wide one, and she's like, oh my God. And she just going to town. So we go from 22 hours to...
Like 12 to 15.
Yeah, I think it was like 15 hours.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, hey, well, let me see your next one. I'll be back. And about an hour later, I come back from the garage, and I can't remember which one
Here
it
you can
was.
show. This will show an idea.
Yeah. So, and of course, I use a Dremel and a stylus, and I'll show you some of those things in a moment. So this was maybe, and again, because the precision around this, honestly, I got a little bit too close, because I'm thinking, oh, I can do this. I can make it look good. It needs to be really spotty. Even just like if you can look right, I don't know how well you can see.
Bring it back. There you go. Yep.
Yeah, so there's just that very slight on the upper corner, this little spot that sticks out.
I'll be hand carving that off.
Yeah, so even the most minute little things will show up. Now, we don't want to be perfect because that is godly, and who are we to emulate God? So we want a little mistake here and there, but not like this. But on the flip side of this, I went through this in, watching TV, probably within maybe an hour.
2 hours max on something super complex.
Yeah, and again,
this one right here, okay, we eventually have to carve out every single one of these diamonds because I'm a glutton for punishment. But what we did do was we took the Dremel tool and we basically stabbed a hole in, because doing so allows us to then take the finer edges, probably the X-Acto knives and one of the wood cutting tools that I have, and then basically chip away straighter lines. Doing this, and I've told you a number of times, every time he uses the Dremel tool to get rid of some of the big stuff, he probably saves me about 8 to 10 hours on each project on average. Before you pull that out, we got two quick questions.
Okay.
Do you add fabric medium in the house paint? Dame Eleanor, we do not. It does affect the drape if you're using very big, like this one right here. You can see it covers a lot of the surface area. Fabric is a little bit stiffer. However, I don't like using medium because it dilutes the color, and I don't like that. So that's really just a stylistic thing. And then Brees says, does the ink tend to bleed more than the paint on fabrics? That is my experience. I might be doing it wrong, but I don't like it, which is why we stick with the house paints.
Okay.
Okay, Dremel tools.
All right, so your classic Dremel and the stylus. So there's so many different types.
That's called the flex shaft attachment.
The flex shaft attachment. So I've got a little tiny, bring the light over. So it's actually, if you see the very end, it's actually a little tiny fan that works, but it does help blow some of the stuff away that you're working with. But it just gives you a very nice control, so you're not having to use the entire Dremel at the time. So it's what I'd recommend, though. You might find something else that works better for you. There's non-Dremel products that take all the Dremel tools that are different. There's one that actually looks like a little gun grip. To me, you just stick with what works. And then...
Can you show them how small those little styli are?
Yes, that's what we're going to be doing next.
Okay, I'm going to post a link to the document real quick while you're talking.
All right. So, Galaxy Quest, the Beryllium Sphere. Great movie, fun movie. This, which is so hard to kind of see. When it's brand new, it's all shiny and silver, and it looks like a little tiny beryllium sphere. And for just carving away massive swaths, this is great. The big thing with the Dremel is you don't want to crank it up as fast as it'll go, especially with the linoleum, because it will tear through it really, really quick. You'll play with different settings, different speeds, and again, let the tool do the work. You're just there to help guide it along. But again, for the larger pieces, again, compared to my thumb, it's, you know, in size. You've got, again...
Sorry, we're trying to adjust a little, guys.
Okay, so
There
this piece...
My face is a good background.
There you go. But you see, just again, just the how it's designed, again, for just removing large chunks, really good for edges, that sort of thing. And then they have, of course, different sizes of that. And see, it's basically the exact same thing. It's just, but you find the things that you like to work with. Here's a circular version of that. Oh goodness.
There you go.
There you go. And then what you will eventually find is going to be your ultimate friend again for like the, where's the chouse piece with the little indentations. So again, getting inside these pieces, and just again making sure you don't go into the lines, because and if you make mistakes, there's a fix for that, and we'll touch base with that later on. But you're going to end up eventually using these ultra tiny pieces. Again, the more of the block
those basically create your grooves in between your elements.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal.
And those will get pretty deep, because everybody keeps asking us, how deep does it go?
As deep as you want it to be total. You could just sit there and just.
I have gotten it stuck.
Yeah. So yeah, you could just light pressure and just again let the tool do the work, and then you go as deep with these as you want. But you'll find the things that work for you. But you're going to want these ultra tiny little stylus pieces, just to get some of those finite details.
So really quickly, all those little pieces that he showed you, technically each one of them have names, which we have to figure out because we've got all the packages still. However, you can buy that as an 11-piece rotary tool cutting and engraving set, and it is in that Amazon list. Mm-hmm. And all those little pieces he just showed you, boom, and it's pretty cheap. I think it's like $13. It's pretty phenomenal. Yeah. So hang on, we got to pause for some questions. Master Philip asks, how does the paint hold up in the laundry? So there is one paint we have used, and we cannot figure out why it is different, because we've looked at the labels, and it appears to be the same as other different colors, but same brands or types. I don't know what that was.
No.
Something outside. Sorry, cat.
Baji.
So that one started flaking off. Actually, this one. So this was much more of a solid print, and it started flaking off. So that's why I kept this for me. But we have machine washed several of them, and we've had clients machine wash several of them and not have any problems. So just to be on the safe side, we recommend hand washing, laying to dry, but ironing is totally fine.
Yeah. It's just
with house paints.
Yeah.
I don't know about the dyes or the inks. Do you think a tool with a foot pedal, i.e. a Fordham, unless they make one for Dremel, would be helpful or not really? Maybe.
Possibly.
I haven't tried it.
Yeah.
I'd definitely be curious to try.
Yeah, I just like the constant speed, but I don't find that I have to actually change the RPM on the tool dramatically from one moment to the next. Once you get that, this is my comfortable speed, you just kind of run with it. So,
Lynette asks, are you still looking for Ketazome and Tsutsugaki references too? That's not working. We just got to be blinded. Blinded by the light. Yes, that's for research. All the references I can get are great. Okay, so we've talked about all of the supplies that you definitely do need and might want for carving blocks. Yeah. You're going to want to take a look at that list and find them around your house. Borrow them from friends if you're in contact with them. Mallet. That's for the printing. We'll get to that in a second. And then, and or buy them from whatever place you want to. And if you want to go to Amazon and not use our links and not give us 3 cents every time you buy a block, that's totally fine with us. We just try to make it easy, too, because it's all in one place. That's the reason why we actually created the Amazon shop. So, let me see you. Awesome. She's going to love me some links. So that's all the stuff that you need for carving the blocks. And we will be back next Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. We will do some hand carving. We will do some Dremel carving. We will try some things, right? And then you will have between Friday the 27th and Tuesday, April 14th, which will be the third class in the series, where we will actually do some of the printing. So, do you want to talk about printing?
No.
I'm putting you on the spot.
No.
I do more of the printing, probably.
Yeah.
You do more of the carving. I do more of the printing.
Yeah.
What about professional dry cleaning if you're using a fabric like silk? Yes, I will warn you, some dry cleaners will look at the block printing and say, I don't want to touch it, because they don't know how things will react. Aveline, when you are able, will you please share your doc on the event page? Yes. Give me a second to do that. Actually, I'll do that when he's talking next. So, in terms of printing, you making fun of me?
Nope. Making fun of me.
Oh, okay. And while we're at it, hang on, before we get on to printing, I'm going to share the link to Baron Buka and Dame Kat's site. If you guys say, you know what, it's really fantastic that you guys do all of your own carving, I am not interested in that. Or I'd love to diversify what I have available. Check these people out. We have a lot of their blocks, which Lothar will show you right now while I share the thing. All of these blocks we commission, and they're done by a laser engraver. That's the Regensburg Lions that he is wearing. He's wearing.
Okay.
That one's a Japanese kimono from them.
So I had a dog that I used to name, his name was Roos. R-O-O-S-E, Roos. Like goose. But this is also Roos.
Kievan Roos.
There you go.
For the win.
So could we have carved these? Yes.
Did we want to spend that time?
No. And sometimes it's, someone wants something very quickly, and it's also the, wow, what's your turnaround on this, as opposed to us finding the time for that.
Yeah, grab the Griffin ones. Like the Griffin blocks. The Griffin blocks would have taken us probably 50 to 75 hours at least. And I don't think we would have anywhere near that precision.
No, they're beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And
that's a Mongolian one.
Mongolian.
13th century Mongolian.
Lions. Griffins? Lions.
Those are lions.
Lions. They bug me. For me, this is too busy, but they're still pretty amazing. Right.
There's no such thing as too busy.
Right.
What kind of monster are you?
Monster.
Okay, I just shared the Google page, the Google Doc link to the event page that we created. Can you steal that link and put it on the official RUM page, Dame Eleanor, pretty please? Okay. Some people sending us some links. People excited, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, swoon, I agree. It's fantastic. So, in terms of printing, let me pull up. So, you've got your block, whether you've purchased it, borrowed it, made it. Great. More is more. I agree with you, Adept. Now you want to apply that pigment. You want to transfer the pigment from the block to your fabric. So first of all, let's talk about which fabrics. You're going to want to use probably, if it's okay for you and you don't have allergies, a natural thing like cotton, linen, silk, or wool if you're very daring. I would not recommend starting with wool. It is a whole different animal, especially depending on which type of wool you are using. You're going to want to get your paint. You can either get a house paint.
I'm going to interject.
Yeah.
The tighter the weave on your linen, the better.
Yes.
So just keep that in mind.
Paint or inks. Speedball makes a variety of inks. I know there are some other brands on the market. I have not played with any of the other brands. And you can actually make your own pigments if you're really into that, but that is a very complex and advanced thing, and I recommend you shoot me a message if you're interested in getting some more information, or you go to that Printed Textiles in the Middle Ages Facebook group that we talked about at the beginning of this broadcast, which I highly recommend. The wealth of knowledge there, and people that are trying all kinds of cool stuff, and experiential archaeology is phenomenal. Baron Buka in particular, who we just sent you his Etsy shop, is was going to be at Gulf Wars one of Their Majesty's champions for his project, in which he made his own carving knife, carved his own wood block, made his own period pigments, and then blocked his own fabric. It's phenomenal. So great resources there. But to get started, we would recommend that you get a house paint. Now here is a super awesome tip for you. When you go into the hardware store, usually like a Lowe's or a Home Depot or a Menards or even an Ace Hardware, if you have them around you, ask them where their mist tint shelf is. You will get a lot of paints super cheap because somebody screwed up. But make sure when you're getting those mist tints that you are not getting glossy, or what's the other one? Semi-glossy, glossy, and one other like exterior. You don't want that. You want an indoor, matte, flat, and you think we should try the satin.
Yeah, we're gonna experiment with some satin next time. I think it's gonna look good, but we'll see how that rolls out.
Okay. Then you are gonna want to get. Oh, you're gonna have to hold this for a second because I put living dangerously here. Got things stacked on top of things so you can get the light up where you need it. Okay, you're gonna want a. It's a nimbus. Give me that. You're gonna want a flat-lipped pan. So in this case, I actually found these for $1 at a secondhand store. Whoa, that glare! Look at that dome. So this is a flat-lipped pan. You can get an aluminum baking pan, like a quarter sheet would be just fine. We also found this, which is it was like you could put your cake in here, and then it had a lid, but it was like the right size for some of the really big blocks that we had. So we used this.
Got rid of the lid.
We got rid of the lid. Well, it's somewhere. Yeah. So we have these types of things. Satin on that Supima cotton. Yes, Marwana, I think that would look beautiful. And then you want craft felt like this. This happens to be brown. I would recommend just doing the lighter colors like whites or grays. I have not had any problems with any of the color from the craft felt actually coming through onto the paint, but I happen to have this brown craft felt just laying around because this is how you're going to create your stamp pad. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to put your house paint or inks in here. You're going to put this on top, and then you're going to wait for the pigment to start bleeding through on top. And then you basically use it like an ink pad, like you will dab it. That is something that we will go over much more in that third class on printing on April 14th, but this is why you need these things. You're going to want to decide which size you need. This particular thing I think is like 16 by 16, maybe 12 by 12. I'm not estimating so good. This is about the same, just a little bit smaller. And then we actually have used, for some of our really tiny blocks, we just use paper plates, which is tiny bit wasteful in terms of you just throw it away when you're done versus the other ones you can wash over and over again. But especially if you're doing, like if I'm teaching a class, this is what I'm going to do because it's a mess otherwise. And sometimes I'm doing like 47 projects at once and I need like 47 different colors. So this is what I do when I'm using smaller blocks. So you want the fabric, you want your paint, you want a craft felt. If you are going to do the stamp pad method, that is what we just showed you. Or you can use a brayer method, and in that case you'll want a soft rubber brayer. You do not want a typical house painting brayer that are like kind of cushy and fabricy and spongy, because that is a nightmare. But you will still need a flat surface like this, because what you'll do is you'll lay the pigment out. See, we haven't washed this one. You'll lay the pigment out here, and then you'll take the brayer or roller and you'll roll it on here to get the paint or the pigment all over your brayer first, and then you would take the block and then you would use the brayer on the block to get the pigment onto the surface to then transfer. Questions? Pizza pans or cookie sheets? Perfect, Gwyneth, either one. Ananda, do you ever print stuff using a brayer? How does that compare to using the stamp pad approach? Okay, so I tried the brayer at first, but I don't think I had a good brayer to start, to be honest, and I hated it. I felt like with the brayer, I kept squishing paint in between my elements. And then I've also heard other people complain that, like, say, because most brayers will come in a certain width, 4 inches, 1.5 inches, 6 inches. The most common, probably for the size that we would do, would be like a 4-inch brayer. Well, 4-inch brayer is only going to go like this, and then you got to come over here and do this, right? Well, when you come over here and use the brayer here, my experience, my ineptitude with the brayer, I end up with this weird sort of line here with the extra paint. And I have heard other people complain that when you use the brayer method, they get the same, or they encounter the same problems. Okay. Now, I know that Baron Jolly Bucco uses a brayer all the time, and he loves it.
Right. So last year we did, Aveline did a costumes for an opera at Wright State. And this pattern here, actually, this vine pattern, I don't know if you can see it. So it was originally that we did it on these can-can skirts and can-can dresses and whatnot. Yeah. So I was helping her out with that, and I used a brayer because it's a very small print, and it speeds the process up. Yeah. Because you just and you just kind of go and go and go.
But if you're doing a bigger print like this, I was having problems. But that is also something that I want to play more with, because, like I said, I have colleagues that prefer the brayer definitely over the stamp pad method. So when we get to the printing in about a month, Tuesday the 14th, we will be practicing and playing with both, so you can kind of see some of the pros and some of the cons of both. My personal preference, and the one that I'm currently advocating for, is the stamp pad method. So, a couple more questions. Do you always stamp on yards of fabric, or do you sometimes stamp after a garment is made? Okay. No. Usually. Option B, and then to the last one you say, yeah. That didn't make any sense. Let me try that again.
So usually
I don't do full swaths of fabric. The difficulty is trying to get enough tightness on your fabric so that your stamp is clean enough. When we make garments, we piece block. So we draw out the piece we know we need with our pattern. We will cut it either exactly to where it needs to be, or with just a little bit of extra fabric beyond the seam allowance. And then we will tape it down onto the surface to try to pull that fabric as tightly as possible, so that when we press the stamp on top, we get a good, beautiful, clean, crisp, clear stamp. So when you try to do huge widths of fabric, because people all the time, I'll pay you insane amounts of money to do four yards for me, and I'm like, no, no, because it's not going to be as pretty as you want to. And you get more waste that way, because in most cases, most patterns are unidirectional. The motifs that you have are unidirectional, while this one certainly would look okay this way or this way. Once it gets going in one direction on your garment, you don't want to cut out your fabric like your gore suddenly are going two different directions. So we piece block almost all of our things. Hang on. And then, yes, every once in a while I will stamp on a garment that is already made. Usually the only time I will do that is if I just want it like along the hem and I want to like measure out the circumference and get it perfectly spaced. And in that case, I make sure not to treat the seams. I don't serge or flat fill or whatever. I just leave them open. I press them open with an iron so that I get as flat a press as possible with the stamp. And then I treat the seams afterwards. Saraswati, if you use a brayer, do you find that if you put the paint on in multiple directions, would that help? I couldn't get it right. Clearly other people can.
Do you always what? Oh.
What'd I miss? That's what I just answered.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry, guys. And then the Midrealm is going to look so fly after these classes. I agree, but I'm also very happy that there are a number of other people from other kingdoms that are here as well. Shout out to all you guys.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. Mom's watching. Okay, I was wondering, because sometimes gores or whatever fit in the layout upside down. Listen, it's also a period to put your gores in with the pattern going the wrong way. That's okay, too. But for our modern sensibilities, we try to make it so that the registration or the orientation of the pattern is going to go all in the same direction. Andy, I did a lot of printmaking in college, and this is a constant struggle with any kind of roller. For lithography, we always used a roller slightly larger than our stone. Makes sense. It's possible to use a smaller roller, but the technique takes years to master. And I haven't mastered it yet. So I'm going to recommend to you all, let's aim for the stamp pad, but we'll play around with the brayer in that Tuesday the 14th class so you can kind of see things. So, we've talked about the required things. You need your fabric. You need your pigment, whether it's paint, dyes, or inks. You need a pan. If you're going to use the stamp pad method, you need craft felt. If you're going to use the brayer method, you obviously need the brayer. Those are the absolute necessary requirements to do block printing. Then, other optional supplies for printing, we kind of just talked about these a little bit. I actually get rolls and rolls and rolls of packing tape so that I can pull my fabric about as, I mean, you don't want it to be pulled so tight that the surface like starts, because you'll be on top of a surface. You don't want the surface to start like warping up. That means you pulled it too tight, and then your motifs or prints, your images will look a little warped and funny. But I use packing tape. I stole one of Lothar's 48-inch square, no, what is it called? Straight edge?
Yeah. It's a 48-inch metal ruler or yardstick.
Because here's the thing. I didn't realize this. This is kind of funny. Most yardsticks, like the cheapy yardsticks you get at Joann's and like hardware stores and stuff, they're not straight. They are not. They are like, whoop. Like there's a curve and a bend to a lot of them, which is why they're 69 cents at the hardware stores. Yeah. So the straight edge metal, and especially 48 inches, is a god.
Like it's 2 inches wide, so you actually have a really solid surface. You can hold it down very easily. Yeah, worth getting.
And then I have an actual chalk pen. It's from Dritz. That's on your list as well. Or you can just get like the triangular Taylor's chalk. And then I have heard other people use painter's tape, like that blue stuff. Excuse me, the hiccups. Use painter's tape instead of chalk or in lieu of chalk to figure out where they want their registration to go. So like the bottom of their block will be just above the blue tape, whereas my chalk almost always is in the center. Right. So if you look at the back of our blocks, you will see I have put an orientation cross. And this technique, which is actually taught to me by Mistress Maria Kargashina of Antir. She is the very first person that I ever took a block printing class from, so shout out to her. And she was using the linoleum blocks like this. And so she has these orientation points, top to bottom, side to side, and then I always put which point is top, because I've, twisted at this point and tried to stamp it that way. Which
again, historically very accurate to do one.
Mistakes are accurate at their period. And then I often will put like how much is the block space and how much spacing do I prefer to do on this particular block.
So the one downside with doing the painter's tape is if you need like a really tight block where it's just literally, side to side, which again, historically very accurate, keeping just, wow, I'm going to block print the hell out of my material. She taught me that because I'm like, ooh, aesthetically, if we go here and we go here and get some space, and she goes, they wouldn't have done that.
They would pack it full.
Right. I got it.
But you do what you want.
Yeah.
That's just my taste.
Yeah. So, but again, with using the painter's tape, you just couldn't get that tight of a placement. So. Yep.
See if there's any other questions, and we'll move on. OCD says no upside down pattern cores. I'm the same way. What about a frame for like silk banner making? Okay, so Gwyneth, that's a great question actually. 15th century Cennini treatise and also a 15th century document from the nuns in one of the nunneries in Germany talks about what were the actual methods of printing things. What was the surface? What did they do? And they had like a little rolly thing, kind of like a quilter's frame today, that they would have the fabric rolling from, and then they would pull it as tight as they could. Then they would apply the block with the pigment on top of the fabric surface, and then from underneath the surface of the fabric, they would use either a, quote, wooden spoon or wooden bowl to burnish the bottom. So like, here. This is a super high-tech demonstration. Hold that. That's your material. Ta-da! Here's your block.
Now you need 2 nuns or 3.
Right. And then you're actually burnishing from the bottom. Yes. And that is awful. It's not a good way. I have a friend in Antir, actually, Mistress Kargashina, tried that. She said it was back-breaking. It was super labor-intensive. And it's much easier just to put it on top of... Oh, we forgot one of the supplies. Much easier to put it on top of your fabric and your underlayment, which we'll talk about in a second, and then you press. And we do have an 8-ounce rubber mallet, which is helpful but not necessary. You can certainly just press, like I'm laying the hammer down, you can certainly just press in all the directions and, basically give CPR to your blocks. I don't. Stop it. But
Should I go get the underlayment?
No, we're just going to talk about it. So
Okay.
we use carpet underlayment, usually 2 or 3 layers, and the layers are only about 1 to 2 millimeters thick. But it's spongy enough that it gives enough of a spring when you put your block down on top of your fabric. This mimics what they would do in period. In period, they would lay down several layers of like a felted wool, and then they would block prints on top of that if they weren't using like the weird quilter's rack contraption that I just described the nuns that used. The problem with that is the pigment or dyes or inks will bleed through to the other fabrics, which is not so bad with inks and dyes, but is no good with house paints, which is what we use. Because if the house paint is bleeding through to your other fabrics are going to stick together, they're going to get crusty, the surfaces are going to get hard. The great thing about the polyurethane foam underlayment, which is on your list of things to get, is that you could wipe it clean, you can let it dry, and then you can take some tape and run some tape over it and it'll come off. Or if you saw our things, and you will probably on the 14th, you'll see multiple other ink stamps. You'll see multiple other ink stamps all over, like, layered on top, because you can see we've done hundreds of hours of stamping or block printing, and you can see all the other things we've done. They make chalk pens. Yes, they do. They're awesome. Thank you for a great class. Thank you very much. Chalk pens are awesome. She has a 72-inch metal yardstick. Quilter's chalk is amazing. Okay, I'll look into that. Someone needs pinstriping tape. They have some of that. FYI, our CNC block creator is here regarding your question. Okay, so we have gone over time. I don't think you guys mind. You don't seem to, because you guys aren't dropping off. But it is 10 after 9, so we're going to keep talking a little bit. We're going to kind of start to wrap things up. Sorry if I hit you.
It's all right.
So moving forward, we have 2 more classes. One is next Friday the 27th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We apologize to our Western Coast friends that it is so early, but it was the best we could do with our RUM schedule. That is on carving your own block. If you don't want to carve your own block, you can buy your block or borrow a block from somebody, and you can just skip forward to the 3rd class. The 3rd class is on Tuesday, April 14th. It's at 7 p.m. It'll be from 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time, and to be honest, we'll probably go beyond that, so you're welcome to stay for as long as you want to. And that is the actual process of printing. You will get a lot more tips and tricks, and you'll see things we've done wrong. We will put together, I've been working on this for a while, because every time I screw up, I take a picture of it so I can be like, what not to do. If you see this, you're doing this wrong. So I'll put together that troubleshooting tips page for block printing. And if you are a member of the Middle Kingdom, attending tonight's class means that you can get credit for 1 hour for this online lecture in the, I think it's Studio and Technical Arts, because technically we're talking about the craft itself and not the fabric modification that much. I'll put some more information about that also in the event page and in the comments below this. And then we've already talked about the Penzic class. July 30th at 1 p.m. That's a Thursday, and August 5th, it's a Wednesday at 1 p.m. as well. It will be a 2-hour class. So if you want to nerd out for 2 hours on all the minutiae of painting, block printing, modifying, patterning, history of textiles, come see me. And by then, I can probably announce some things that I have learned and discovered that I've had to keep secret. Because I did some research and I discovered some things, and I'm working with some curators to announce those things to the world, and I can't tell anybody yet.
Nope.
If that's not a teaser, I don't know what is. So let's see if there are any other questions. Quilter's chalk. CNC creator, we'll talk to them. I've used felt under a newspaper for padding, but for small pieces. That makes sense. Okay. Eastern Daylight Time. What did I say? Eastern Standard Time? I don't know. RUM credits. Thank you. Odette just posted the link to that. PM to Quilter's chalk. Thank you. More. Are you doing the September joint university with Meridies and Atlantia and the Midrealm? I am not aware of that, so send me some information. Automatically connects to the correct college. Okay. All right, so I'm going to post one more time in the link, the comments below, the link to the handout for tonight, as well as the Amazon links, as well as Baron Jollybuka's shop. Do you have any last words while I'm doing that?
No.
Ooh, show. Do you want to show them some of the? I don't know. It's kind of daring. Our house isn't clean. Do you want to show them some examples of what people can make with their block printing?
You mean like the clues?
Yeah, like that and that. Yeah.
I guess I can walk around and show you the things. So. So this is the
Apron dress.
Yep, the apron dress. And again, this is our experiment with wool. So we're just kind of waiting honestly to see how this kind of holds up and everything else. Chausses in process. Some of them that we're doing. So super, super brilliant. I mean, just really remarkable things. This actually, so this is actually really cool. It is a mistake, therefore it's kind of over here. But the block, do you have that over by you?
I don't think I do.
Ah, here it is. So this is the block that we showed earlier. Okay, and then the precision of actually lining that up and going from side to side so you have that overlap is just really, really spectacular. Unless in mid-process
you drop the block.
You drop the block, and then all of that work is for naught. But again, just really, really neat stuff. So, I don't know how good the lighting is over here. So this is just, again, some of the, just the different things, the colors, do we sell the one with just the trim? Hold on.
We sold that one.
Oh, it's already gone,
Yep.
shipped out? Yeah. So this was the acrylic paint that we use as opposed to the latex. So on the silk taffeta. And it was actually a mistake because I actually bought the acrylic instead of the latex, but it's held up really, really beautifully. So, and again, it just really sets off, I think. So, and just some of the things. Yeah, it's gorgeous. Absolutely
So
gorgeous.
hopefully that gives you some inspiration of things that you can do. You can do the full outfits. You can do along the base. You can do just trim the hems and cuffs and even maybe the yoke of the tunic, for example. You can do just the front of an apron dress. Trying to make sure there aren't any other questions that we missed. Thank you, Duchess Rebecca. We appreciate that. Yes, we will be putting the classes up onto YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'm glad that you said that. So I'm going to put a link right now to YouTube if I can find it, or I'll do it shortly. We need 1,000 subscribers on our channel so that we can live stream directly from YouTube, which allows us a lot more advanced capabilities. So I'm going to shamelessly plug and ask that if you enjoyed tonight's class, you want to see more, or if you just want to follow our journeys in block printing, different crafts that we do in the SCA, and I received a grant, and I will be, hopefully this year, we don't know what's going on with the current political climate, but I should be going to Europe, going to both the United Kingdom and Germany with the grant to do research at a number of treasuries and museums and institutions. So I will be doing a daily blog, and you'll be learning all kinds of fun stuff about block printing, its research, and its history there. So once I find out whatever our YouTube channel link is, we'll post it in the comments.
So subscribe, say like, share, etc., etc. So
whatever those cool kids do.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified.
Yeah.
You don't watch YouTube. That's
No,
okay.
I don't. No.
All right. Will you link for underlayment? I'm only finding 100-foot rolls. Yeah, that's the problem. Share it with a friend, because that's all I found. The smallest I've ever found was a 50-foot, and that was just as expensive as the 100-foot. It's usually between $30 and $50. It is a heck of an investment, but somebody had some great ideas. You could use craft felt with newspaper over top of it if that's just too cost prohibitive for you. What else? Okay. So we still have 100 people here. I feel like we should be doing something. Oh, some people wanted some updates on Sartor fabrics. Do we want to do that now or later?
That's all you.
We'll do that later.
Okay.
We'll do a quick update on our own personal store and the Sartor fabrics that we're selling, because we'll just keep this exclusively about the block printing.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yes, you people should go in on a roll of underlayment. So, any other questions or things that you are struggling with?
Hold on, do you want to just go buy under and then we could just ship it out and just break it down? Or no?
That's a lot of work.
Okay. All right. Sorry, tried to help you out.
You guys got to figure that out before April 14th.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and sign off for now. Yeah. We appreciate everybody that came out. We know we had a bunch of people from around the known world, and even people that don't do the SCA. If you're interested in the SCA, the Society for Creative Anachronism, we invite you to go to the website, which is www.sca.org. That will also help point you to the direction of your local group in case you want to get some more information about that.
So on a quick side note, just for that personal reference, so one of the most amazing things about the SCA is that it is founded on courtesy, chivalry, and honor, which brings some of the best people you ever want to meet to this organization. You get your occasional ass hat, but
don't say that.
Oh no! But you get that in any organization. But it's just, again, incredible people. It has been just an amazing life. So hopefully we'll see some of you there in the future. So.
If you aren't already a member of the SCA, because we know we had a bunch of people that asked, "Can we attend this?" And it's like, absolutely, please do. So. Thank you, Dad. Good job. Let's show him Dad's blocks. So my dad, I got him...
back here.
I got my dad some linoleum blocks and a wood carving kit for Christmas because he thought what I was doing was pretty interesting. And he carved this. Hang on. Not necessarily historically documentable, but certainly period inspired. And look at this. First time with just a little kit from Joann's that was very, very not cost prohibitive. Yeah, look at everybody's giving you thumbs up and wow faces, Dad. So I can't wait to put this on something of mine because it's very special to me. So, all right. Thank you all very much for joining us.
See you in a week.
Yeah, March 27th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone.
Okay.
Bye.
Right. Bye.